Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. I'm not surprised, but as we sit here, I guess 4 days from game day, there's not a lot of juice around the ReliaQuest Bowl. But I do find some intrigue. I think my stance on this game has been well documented. I think a lot of people disagree, but I'm just not really gung-ho on the you got to get to your 10th win, you got to ride momentum into the off-season. I don't think this is a make-or-break day for Garrett Nussmeier. I do find some things interesting, though, and most of what we have talked about has been Garrett Nussmeier and this offense and what that looks like. And that's important. But on the other side of the ball, I think there's a lot of intrigue as well. I'm being pie in the sky here because we know how this story ends. But do you recall a January day in Northeast Texas back in 2011 when some freshman DBs showed up and showed out in a Cotton Bowl win over Texas A&M? Tyrann Mathieu had an interception in that game. Eric Reed had an interception in that game. Daryl Simon played a lot at defensive back in that game. And Spencer Ware had a breakout day that day too as a freshman, but I'm thinking more so those DBs. And sure, LSU at times has had true freshmen show up and be ready to play defensive back. Patrick Peterson was ready to go. Derek Stingley was ready to go. Now, these are 5-star, top 10 players in the country. We get it. But that's not always the case with every freshman that shows up, as good as a lot of LSU's DBs have been over the last 20 years. But you would think come into November and then into a bowl game that freshmen have put on some weight, have understood the speed of the game to a certain extent, and have kind of taken a jump from where they were in August. At least that's the hope. And that's my hope as LSU takes the field against Wisconsin with the cornerback duo of Ashton Stamps and Javian Toviano. This has been a winding road at DB for LSU this year. You've gone through Denver Harris and Deuce Chestnut and Zy Alexander and Greg Brooks. You never had J.K. Johnson. You've had Sage Ryan back there. He's been in and out and corner and nickel and back to safety. But at the bye week, you committed to Javian Toviano and Ashton Stamps as your two corners. The transfer portal guys had either gotten hurt or weren't with the team or whatever the case may have been, and those became your guys. And were they all world in Tuscaloosa? No. But they didn't give up huge plays. Were they all world against Texas A&M? No, they gave up some points to a third-string quarterback. But you didn't see the massive bust, and it didn't look quite as easy for A&M with a third-string quarterback, I get it, as it did for Missouri 3/4 of that game and Ole Miss and Florida State in the second half. And, maybe there were some improvements that were being made. And I think likely you go into the 2024 season with Ashton Stamps and Javian Toviano as two pieces in your secondary. Where that is, what you add in the transfer portal or what these freshmen that you're bringing in can do remains to be seen. But to me, this is a great opportunity. As comfortable a landing spot as this game is for Garrett Nussmeier with the weapons that he's got around him to play offense, it's just as comfortable, I think, for these two freshman LSU corners against this Wisconsin offense. Wisconsin has one pass catcher on the roster, one, who has multiple touchdown catches this year. That's Will Pauling. He's the only guy who's got multiple touchdown catches on the season for Wisconsin. Bryson Green is second on the team in receptions and receiving yards. He's got 375 yards on the year. That's 100 yards back behind Kyron Lacey, who's running third behind two 1,000-yard guys in LSU's offense. To call this Wisconsin passing attack pedestrian would be quite generous. It's bad. This Badger team threw for 145 yards against Minnesota. They threw for 160 against Nebraska, 164 on Ohio State, 145 on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, 193 on Purdue, 189 on Buffalo, not the Bills. This is a fine matchup for LSU on the edge. And maybe an opportunity for Ashton Stamps and Javian Toviano to grow into a really good set of LSU cornerbacks. They got here different ways. Toviano was thought of as a high 4-star level prospect, somebody that Texas wanted and Texas A&M wanted and LSU wanted. Like everybody that was, the big boys were recruiting Javian Toviano. That's not necessarily the case for Stamps, but in Stamps' case, you started to pick up the buzz in August. He was taking reps in a spot where we didn't necessarily expect to see him taking reps. The coaches were talking about him. The players were talking about him. And we've seen those guys too. Maybe a little under-recruited, but all of a sudden they get to campus and you go, oh, yeah, I think he can play. And a lot of times that happens with Louisiana kids. Because LSU doesn't take a lot of fringe 3-stars from Arkansas or South Carolina. Most of the fringe 3-stars that you're going to take are going to come from right here in the state. And Ashton Stamps, depending on where you're looking, fits that mold. This is not a situation where these two guys are being forced into action and don't have the necessary skills to play at LSU. That's not the case. They're just young. And now, getting to the end of your first year, you should be a different player than you were Labor Day weekend. And I do think, as great as we would feel if Garrett Nussmeier goes out there and throws for 360 and 4 touchdowns on Monday, I'd feel pretty good if Javian Toviano and Ashton Stamps went out there and both got their hands on a couple of footballs, had some pass breakups, sure tackling, maybe an interception here or there, show a little confidence, a little swagger. Because as much as we were looking at LSU's offense in this game as kind of a precursor to next year with the new quarterback, a lot of that was this will be Garrett Nussmeier's third year in Mike Denbrock's system. Well, now all of a sudden, just by definition, LSU's defensive coordinator is far more likely to be here next year than the offensive coordinator. And we probably wouldn't have said that a week ago, but here we are. So maybe this is the same group of players that'll be playing for the same coordinator. Maybe not in this era, who knows? But I will have my eyes on that because I was in Jerry World watching those young kids run around against Texas A&M, watching Tyrann Mathieu make a diving pick, watching Eric Reed all around the football, Thurl Simon out there, Spencer Ware. Yeah, Jordan Jefferson had a really good game, and yeah, Terrence Tolliver got a ton of yards in his last game as a Tiger, but I was watching the younger guys going, oh, it's be pretty good. And I'm not trying to suggest in any way that next year's LSU team is going to look like the 2011 team, okay? You're never going to hear me say that before a season starts. But I do think in a game where I'm not putting a massive amount of stock in the end result, the individual performances by a couple of guys who have been settled on and are manning a group that struggled mightily this year against a bad passing offense, mind you, I would really love it if those two guys stepped up and announced their presence as guys that are going to potentially be really good players at LSU. Because while you bring in a transfer portal guy, just doesn't quite look right. Seen that in basketball, seen that in football as well. You know, they move on and they're just not a factor. If a freshman struggles, well, maybe they can grow up. Maybe there's time to develop. That's the way Brian Kelly wants to do that. How much development has gone on with those two guys as we get into the bowl game? I guess we'll find out Monday morning at 11 o'clock. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.